We got a big battle in front of us, baby. And it's just starting. So let's get funky like a monkey. For 16 years, the American dream has done it with you. Don't fail me now. Lord, don't fail me now.
All right. The Wrestlebros are back. Captain Lou, once again, fighting with the camera.
The camera loves me, bro. The camera loves me.
Vic Blaze. There's a lot of news, a lot of rumors, I should say. News and rumors. Who's gonna end up where? What's gonna happen once they get there? I don't know. Wrestling is nuts. It's all just craziness.
That, my friends, is a good thing.
It is exciting, yeah. When wrestling is crazy like this, it's really good. It's really fun. It's fun. Maybe not fun for the wrestlers that are getting fired. At least not when they first get fired. But hey, if they love it, they'll find a way to make it happen, right?
Absolutely.
Like Bray Wyatt. If Bray Wyatt, who was fired by the WWE, and I guess they're cutting costs.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels weird, don't it? It feels like
there's more to that than meets the eye. A lot more to it.
So what do you think it is?
I honestly think, and this might be a take that most people may not look at, I think that the WWE and Wyndham Rotunda, the man behind Bray Wyatt, actually came to an agreement to let him walk for now. The reality becomes is that I think the WWE is willingly taking the heat publicly for releasing Bray Wyatt as a means to cover up if there is any truth to the reports of possible mental health issues that Wyndham Rotunda has been having. Then WWE may have done themselves, give him a break and cut him loose from his contract. It kind of works for all parties involved. It gives Bray Wyatt a chance to really decompress without the pressures of having to go back to work. And WWE is no longer having to invest money in a performer who, quite frankly, isn't ready to come back to work. So that kind of comes across that way. I believe that at least, and I have nothing to substantiate that. That's just, I'm kind of looking at it. There's a lot more to this than meets the eye. So time will tell, but I think that more than anything, WWE is actually willingly taking the heat here for releasing him, and I think it's more of a mutual agreement on both sides.
Well, I don't know, because I feel like if they don't have to take the heat, right? They can just say, "Hey, Bray Wyatt has asked for his release," like Ric Flair did, and we granted it.
Different circumstance, though.
But why would you not just say that he wanted his release? Like,
because ultimately, if he wanted to grant his release, then the questions are going to come about the reasons why. And the thing about it is that at some point, if there, obviously for all wrestlers, at some point there's always going to be some frustration. As Jim Ross has put it many times, it's either through two things: it's cash or creative. And for a guy like Bray Wyatt, I don't think money was the issue necessarily. Creative, maybe. And if it's to a point where, Bray Wyatt has not been, for lack of a better term, in the game mentally for the last little while, then I can understand where it's like, okay, if you're the company, you're the employer, a guy like Bray Wyatt is not making minimum wage. This dude is making a lot of money. And ultimately, he's the kind of performer that you're going to want to feature him on television, and you're going to want to put him on as often as you can. And he hasn't been on WWE TV at all since WrestleMania. And WrestleMania looked like it was a very abrupt, he's in there to kind of get this story, wrap it up in some kind of a bow and keep it moving. And I'd figure, okay, he'd get a little bit of a timeout and then come back, when they wanted to push a reset button on him. I saw recent pictures of him. He looked like he's lost a lot of weight. He looks good. And from what I've been reading, he was supposed to come back in the month of August. Presumably, I'm guessing for SummerSlam. And this comes very much out of left field to say that he was released. I was shocked, but at the same time, I'm looking at it and saying, if it's a situation to where the company doesn't want to say, hey, we came to a mutual terms of agreement, and then the question becomes, why would the WWE want to let go of one of their top stars, one of their top merch sellers, one of their top acts, just for that reason? Because if the WWE sincerely wanted to hold on to him and were willing to, let's just say that if Bray Wyatt were not in the right frame of mind to get in the ring, and WWE really wanted to continue paying him, they certainly would. They got all the cap space to do it. Now, whether or not he's got a 7-figure downside guarantee or whatever, I don't know what the logistics are, but obviously the higher the number of a downside guarantee, the more money you got to pay for somebody to sit at home who's technically not physically injured, is not incapable of wrestling. It's just a matter that if they're not in the right headspace, they could get hurt or can hurt somebody else. So it's something that, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it, but I think that ultimately at the end of the day, it seems like more of a timeout than it does a parting of ways, even though it was a release. But I got a feeling that in some time, I don't know how long it will be, but you'll probably be seeing, Wyndham Rotunda back in the WWE. When? Don't know. But I'm hoping, that if it is anything that's beyond a creative issue or a money issue, I don't believe that. I don't believe that's a budget cut issue. I think that that's nonsense. I don't believe that. But if it's any kind of a mental health issue, which has been rumored, then it does. I would prefer, for the sake of the human being, that he's not wrestling. Get your head right, get yourself in the right space, and then when you're ready to go back to work, no matter where it is, we'll see you there.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the reasoning. But I also didn't know the reasoning behind Braun Strowman, and I'm sure Braun Strowman, it ain't have anything to do with. Well, if it's money for Braun, it should be money. It should be money for Bray.
Well, I'll tell you this. The reason why I could probably believe more that it's a money issue for Braun Strowman is because, again, with all due respect to him, because Braun Strowman, if you're paying a guy like that a downside guarantee that was reported at $1.2 million, that guy could wrestle every single show and do everything that he does as he's contracted to do. The thing is like, again, with any company that's doing downsizing or right sizing or however they want to frame it, you start looking at your employees or the people that are the highest earners. And then the question that you ask yourself is, are they giving us any added value for the money we're paying them? In the case of Braun Strowman, I could probably make the argument that the answer is no. That outside of what he does in the ring, he's not an ambassador to the WWE. He's not a big merch seller that I know of. He's not a person who is, doing interviews or, doing the promotional loops in terms of, radio, TV, things of that nature. So it almost seems like a guy like him, if you wanted to restructure his contract, it's not like you're going to go to Braun Strowman and tell him, hey, Braun, you know what? We want to restructure your contract and pay you less money, especially when they're in it. Because I'm sure that he would look at them and say, no, I'm not working for less. So in those cases, what you do is you release them. Unfortunate. I mean, again, it's unfortunate. You release them. And then if the WWE or Braun Strowman decide, hey, we want to talk again and start all over again, then what you do is, in essence, is that you renegotiate for a contract that is probably a little more to what WWE's liking would be. Because I think that to a certain degree, when AEW first opened its doors, WWE, in essence, overpaid for some of their talent. And I think they might be having some sort of buyer's remorse, later on down the line about, people they have under contract. So this is, it kind of feels like a right sizing, but I don't see Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt being the same situation in terms of why they were released. at least from a finance perspective.
Well, I'll defend WWE a little bit here. I don't know why they are cutting people, but I could see that they are overpaying in their eyes, because I don't think they're overpaying anyone. I think they're underpaying everyone except for Brock Lesnar, just based on compared to any other. I know it's not a sport, but film is even worse. So let's not compare it to film. Let's not compare it to television. If you compare it to sports or like even the NHL, it's like the amount of, I mean, we've already discussed this, but the amount of money going towards wrestler pay is so low. It's so low.
Well,
it's crazy how low it is.
My question would be, is low, see, I guess it's weird because I almost want to ask low compared to what? Meaning,
compared to,
is it not compared to other sports leagues, because that's ridiculous. You're not going to be paying wrestlers, $40 million or whatever it is that the top players making.
You're looking at it the wrong way. They don't. It's not that they pay a wrestler $40 million or whatever. It's that the company pays its wrestlers maybe 10-15% of the money coming in goes to wrestlers, and okay, I'll let you finish. I don't want to cut you off. If you look at in sports, almost every sport that's a big deal, NHL, MLB, NBA, even NFL, who's the cheapskates,
they're the league with the most control over its union.
Yes, they have the most control over their players, but even them, it's much closer to half of the money is going to the performers, to the stars. So, that's why I'm a little like, but either way, it doesn't matter. They get to decide what they're going to pay their people. That's fine. It's their business. They run it however they want to. But as a wrestler, if I was a wrestler and I see that we're in the middle of a pandemic and I'm used to working 300 dates, and all of a sudden I'm working 40 dates, 50 dates, and my boss came to me and said, look, this contract is for 250 dates and you did 40 dates. Like, I'm sorry, but I can no longer afford this. Can we restructure your deal? I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't think you're trying to screw me at all. It is true that I am working a quarter of the dates. Now, if you can give me, instead of a quarter of the money, if you can give me 40% of that, 45% of what I was getting for now, give me a 2-year deal or whatever, and hopefully this will be cleared up. I think a lot of wrestlers who are happy with the company would say, you know what, you're right. Let's change the amount of dates. If I'm going to work 50 dates, whatever, if that, instead of making whatever $1 million, now I'm making $450,000, you know what, I'm going to have to take that. And they can say, look, we can't afford it. Straight up, we cannot afford this. We cannot afford this, and we will not be able to continue with this contract unless we restructure. And then as the wrestler, at least you have a say. You have a choice to make. Do I restructure or do I get fired? Instead of getting fired and then go, well, maybe we'll talk later, but we're gonna fire you for now. I think it's a little weird.
Well, I mean, yeah, it certainly is, and the reality is that in wrestling, this is always, it's always happened, right? Wrestlers have always had to move on. Wrestlers have always, moved from one promotion to another, and either the wrestler would give their notice in the olden days, they'd give their notice, or the promotions would say, okay, we're wrapping you up on XYZ date. Like that's always been the case in professional wrestling. Now, the thing is, in today's marketplace, when you take a look at pro wrestling and how it's structured, even the smallest of companies, for their their talent that are figured in, they're all under contract of some sort. Some sort of contract that ties them down in some way, shape, or form. So a lot of times, companies they have to come to terms with the wrestlers, because the wrestlers to a certain degree don't necessarily have the ability to say, you know what, I'm quitting, and I'll give you my 2-week notice or whatever, and then they'll just do jobs on the way out. That's usually not the way it works anymore. It's either, you and the company come to a mutual agreement about, okay, I got X amount of time left on my contract, but you know what? I'm not feeling it. Can I please be released? If the company grants it to you, they might say, okay, we'll grant it to you, but you got to do a couple jobs on the way out, whatever. Sure. Just, get me out of here. The thing is that all of those things now are much more publicly known. And the wrestling public, of course, we get a lot of information, but we don't necessarily know all the details of what goes on and why those decisions are made. And I think to a certain degree with the WWE, to speak about them specifically, they have a lot of heads on their roster. They have a lot of head count. And sometimes what ends up happening is for a lot of talents, we might look at certain talent and say, how could this happen? In the case of Bray Wyatt, I kind of had that whole, why is this happening deal? So that's why I'm saying there's a lot more than meets the eye. But in the overwhelming majority of cases, when people get released from their WWE contracts, it's usually people that pretty much the company's not doing much with. And it's probably best for the talent to be released and to move on, because they get an opportunity to get a fresh start elsewhere, and, in essence, learn a new hold. And then it's either they can go work for, other companies and, be able to be a featured player there, or come back to the WWE, later on down the road. It's happened numerous times, and it will happen many more times again. Wrestlers, it happens all the time. Sometimes wrestlers, need a fresh coat of paint. They need a change of scenery. In some other cases, it's just a matter that, their time is up. And wrestler, and the thing about it is, wrestlers and promotions kind of need to know that, and they need to be a little more aware of that, and be willing to, to cut ties, even if it's in the WWE or AEW or any of the bigger companies. You got to be able to know when it's time to cut the cord and when it's time to take a walk. And I think in Bray Wyatt's case, I think more than anything, it's probably both players understanding that it's like, hey, we need a break. But I don't, as far as I'm concerned, I think that we'll be seeing Bray Wyatt again in the WWE. I just don't know when, but we'll be seeing him again. And hopefully this time they'll book it right. They meaning WWE. Will book the.
I don't see WWE booking anything right for a long time.
And in all honesty, I'll just say this, and then we can move on. If ever the Fiend were to come back to the WWE, he's a babyface. Babyface.
Well, he's been a babyface for the past year.
Well, but I'm talking about, a babyface in the sense of, kind of like, I hate using the Undertaker as an example, but like the Undertaker, to where he's a guy that's coming in and he's the regulator. He's the one that shows up, and when things are starting to get out of whack, either heels get a little bit, too big for their britches, they're starting to, overplay their hand. Then that's when the Fiend shows up and he straightens them out. And that's, a gimmick like that could work really, really well. It's just, unfortunately, again, Bray Wyatt would have benefited from having kind of like the wackier characters, kind of like the Undertaker, Kane, Mankind, gimmicks like that, because those types of gimmicks would work really well to fight against the Fiend and be able to make that stick. But anyway, we'll move on, because then we'll just be on this topic for forever and ever.
Well, no, I say let's have a little bit of fun. So let's say that he is released, definitely, because they don't want him for whatever reason. And in 90 days, he's going to show up somewhere else. Now, we have the the term or the name Cult of Wyndham swirling around. So it looks like he's already thinking about it. He's already thinking about what he's gonna do, how he's gonna do it. The, I think the word cult. I think multiple people. I think the obvious is he showing up somewhere with maybe a Bo Dallas and a Braun Strowman together, and maybe starting this cult of Wyndham. But what do you do with this guy? How would you debut him? I think everybody would want him. Obviously,
Oh yeah, I mean
he's a
that would
huge star.
no, that's a no brainer. It's a matter of for him. I think that it's really weird to me because when people talk about reuniting him with Braun Strowman and Bo Dallas, I'm actually not really big on that idea. I like the idea of him being alone. Um, because with all due respect, it's just a matter that when I look at Bo Dallas, and again, Bo Dallas is a very, very good wrestler. It's just a matter that once he graduated outside of NXT, he never really got any legs going on the WWE main roster. He was there for several years and he just kind of floundered to the point where his value diminished as a result of that. With Braun Strowman, again, I think that Strowman is probably another guy that would be best served. As weird as this sounds, because again, a guy like Strowman's not a guy that's built for the indies. He's a guy that's built to be on national television. But my concern is that if Strowman were to come back to the WWE, that'll be fine. He can just kind of pick up where he left off. But if he was to go to AEW, which is what most people would think, I don't necessarily know that he fits in with AEW and the way that they do their shows and the way that they book all their stuff. So honestly, he's a guy that I'd like to see what he can do on his own, meaning Strowman. Whether if he comes back to the WWE again, it's wash, rinse, repeat. We're right back to where we were, unless WWE gives him a renewed push. In AEW, it would be a matter of bringing him in and making him a badass monster, and making sure that every time he shows up, he's breaking people in half. Like there's no ambiguity. There's no clowning around. There's no messing around. With a guy that's 6'8", 350 pounds, and he's just, chiseled out of granite that can probably flip over a small house. You don't have him doing any funny stuff. You don't have him involved with anything that's perceived as goofy or comedic on the show. I think that he would succeed if booked that way. Do I think that he would need Bray Wyatt? No, not at all. I think that Bray Wyatt would actually overshadow him because the fans view him as a bigger star, and Bray Wyatt is a much better overall performer because of the fact that he can get on the microphone. Bray Wyatt can, and cut outstanding promos and tell whatever stories he wants to tell and mesmerize the audience in the process. And that's something that for Strowman, he's in a position now where he's his own standalone star in a very different way. And to pair him back up with Bray Wyatt may actually do more to hurt him than help him in the short term. Because, if you got the possibility of having two big single stars, there's no reason to pair them up in the beginning, if the audience already recognizes them as big time individual stars with their own, skills and talents that they bring to the table.
Yeah. See, me personally, I'm not a huge Braun Strowman fan. So if he showed up in AEW, I'd be like, eh. And whenever you have someone who's that big, it's like I just hate it. It's like, not because it's bad or whatever, it's just impossible to book because you have to book them like unstoppable monsters. But if they're unstoppable monsters, then they have to eventually get a title shot. And once they get a title shot, they probably need to win it. and then I mean, they don't have to win it, of course. They can lose, but it just feels like they can't ever lose. But once they lose, it feels like that's it. It's like, okay, and now it's hard to have this big monster. I just think of the Big Show, think of Kane, think of people like that, these big monsters that are gonna they get their initial big scary guy push, and once it's over, it's like now it's 5 years of just like, then you have to turn them babyface and heel and babyface and heel.
Well, I listen, I understand, but I mean that's the reason why personalities like that, excuse me, are not people who should be on the show every week. Now, if you keep them as special attractions and you have them appear at specific times for specific reasons, then it works much stronger versus if, to use your point, to use Kane and Big Show when they first got to the WWE, 20 plus years ago, they get the initial, big scary man push, and they'll have that for 3 months, 6 months, a year, however long it goes. And then once that's done, then yes, once, like let's say the Big Show, once he got his initial 6-month push, once he gets Stone Cold Stunnered, or once he get rock bottomed, the bloom is off the rose, right? The giant's been beaten. The thing is that typically that wouldn't happen because you wouldn't see the Big Show enough on WWE TV or anybody's TV for that matter to be put in that compromising position. A guy like Strowman in AEW can be the monster guy and kill everybody because again, when you see the physical disparity, it's night and day. Strowman walks into the room and he's head and shoulders physically above everybody. And that's something that you have to play into. Now, it would work, meaning that Strowman could be beaten by whoever the babyface is. Let's say, for example, if Adam Page was the AEW champion. Because it's not going to work with Omega because Omega's a heel, and the way that Omega is coming across on television, it would actually not work at all. It would actually be not good, period. Because he would make Strowman look bad just in the process of all the goofy shit that he does. But if Adam Page, let's just say that Adam Page is the AEW champion, he's like the straight babyface, right? Cowboy shit, the beer, Adam Page, big over babyface. Strowman could kill everybody. Then when he gets to Page, he puts Page down, right? He physically gets to Page and he breaks Page too. The difference is that when you have the title match, Page beats him, but he doesn't beat him flat. Page escapes. And then you continue the story. Because eventually, one or two things is going to happen. It's either Strowman's going to they're going to put the title on him and he's going to become the man, or Page is going to slay the beast, slay the giant. And then from there, that's where the creativity really begins in terms of, okay, how do you keep Strowman looking strong after the big loss? And that's something that a lot of people, that's not just AEW, WWE, it's very difficult because there isn't enough forethought put into the guys that lose. I always say it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you win or lose that means the most. Because I've seen instances where guys lose and they get over way more. And then I see instances where guys lose and they get buried, or I see instances where guys win and you're like, who cares? Like it's a matter of how it's done, how it's executed, and how the audience receives it. So again, I think that Strowman could work in AEW, but he has to be on his own. He should be paired with absolutely no one. He's his own gang, because he can walk around and realistically no one's gonna mess with him. They'd be crazy if they do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I'd rather Strowman just go back to WWE.
You know what? Here's the deal. And
maybe he will.
And you know what? I think that more than likely that's the play. That's going to likely be the play. He's not going to make the money he was making beforehand, but guess what? Even if you, like I said, we spoke about this many videos ago, that even if he got paid half of what he was making, he's still making more than the majority of professional wrestlers around the world. He's in the top 10 percentile, even if he was making half of what he was earning previous.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if he's smart with his money, which I'm presuming that he is, then if he's making 600, 700K a year, come on, give me a break. Dude's set. You know, just be smart with your money, and then you have the leverage in negotiation, because then you get to choose where you want to work.
Yeah. Yeah, so Strowman, I'd like to see him back in WWE. Bray, I don't mind the idea of the cult of Wyndham. Who wants to join? I mean, who would be down with him? I don't know. Most likely it would be Strowman and Bo Dallas. And if it's AEW, I'd be okay with Strowman being the heater or the big man or the bodyguard, whatever.
He's the muscle.
The muscle. He can be a big imposing figure and not have to have matches all the time, like you said. He's just there to beat people up, and that'll be his gimmick, the big scary guy who just beats people up and doesn't really need to have matches. He's just an attraction. I think that's a good way to use him. And Bo, I had the idea I feel like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, of Bo Wyatt. I've been saying it ever since he grew that weird pointy mustache, and he had a little bit of a goatee going. I don't know if you remember this look that he had.
Yeah, he couldn't. He had like the Stevie Wonder goatee. He couldn't connect it.
Yeah, he had like a weird but he looked a little creepy. He looked like an evildoer, and I like a villain in a movie or something. And I was like, I think a Bo Wyatt, it can happen. It can work.
It's weird to me because although Bo Dallas and Bray Wyatt look exactly alike, you can't. If you was to shave the beard off of both of them, they're exactly alike. They're in the face.
Yeah.
The difference is that when I look at Bo Dallas has like the true baby face, and his body, like everything about him, does not. When you stand him next to Bray Wyatt, it's because their body composition is different, although their faces from the neck up, it's exactly the same. But I'm as much, and I know that I've heard you say this idea, it's not new. You've said this many times. It's a matter that I don't think that it would work, because I think that for Bo Dallas, he would have to put on some more weight, meaning he'd have to fill up a little more. He'd have to fill out.
Well, we don't know what he looks like right now, but it's easy for him to. He's been fighting not to be chubby for a long time.
But what I'm talking about is not being chubby, meaning in shape but bigger than what he was physically, larger. I'm not saying that he's got to put on 20 pounds of muscle. I'm just saying that what he has, work with what you have, and make sure that if Bray Wyatt is not a muscle man, and if you're going to be standing, let's say presumably you're standing next to Strowman's going to make you look like a small child standing next to him. So there has to be something about your physical look that stands out, because you're not going to look like Bray Wyatt, because Bray Wyatt is just his look is so unique. You're not going to be able to look like anything standing next to Strowman because his physical look is so imposing. So if you're going to have a Bo Dallas in this group, there has to be a little more to him. I don't know exactly what look I would go for. I think that with the hair, if he's going to grow out the beard, he's got to truly commit to growing it out. That might be helpful for him. But I'm not sure that I would be bought into a Bo Wyatt type gimmick, although I know that they're brothers and it's an easy story to tell. I would just have to see it to believe it. I would have a difficult time being convinced into it without seeing it first.
Yeah, I am really confident that he can make it work, especially if it's him working with Bray and them talking about it, coming up with ideas, because Bray is really good at coming up with characters and ideas and things like that.
No, he's fantastic.
I think Bray together, I think they could figure it out. And they can always call Dad and ask for advice.
Can I speak to the IRS, please?
And
we know him as Dad.
I think they could figure something out to make it interesting. At the end of the day, he's been. I mean, he in NXT he was a top guy, but after that, once he made it to the main roster, he was pretty much a lower card guy, comedy guy.
Oh, you're talking about Bo Dallas.
Bo.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So I think anything besides what he was doing would be an improvement. So okay. I think being with his brother, even as the sidekick who is the one that takes the bumps for Bray, like he doesn't have to. He's not gonna be the star. I'm sorry, it's gonna be hard.
No,
it's not impossible. Way. It's not impossible because we don't know what.
Highly unlikely. I would say highly unlikely.
It would be incredibly difficult. But if Bray, remember what Bray was before he was Bray. Try to remember, he was nowhere near.
I know.
In a million years, Bo Dallas, 1.0, and what did he go by? What was Bray's first?
Husky Harris.
Husky Harris. This is not close. Bo is the bigger star, and it's not close. He's 10 times better than him, and Bray figured it out. And maybe Bo can figure out a way to get up to Bray's level. Maybe with Bray's help, but we don't know that. We'll have to see him.
No, we certainly do. I mean, my whole thing is with Bo Dallas is that I have no question about his in-ring ability and his talent, belt to belt. I have no question that he can hold his own in that regard. It's a matter of whether or not, again, with a guy like Bray Wyatt, he is recognized as such a big star by the audience that he will overshadow anyone that is paired with him, unless the person that's with him is willing to be viewed as subservient to him, and then see the process whether or not, because again, you can't even begin to start pulling triggers about trying to create new stars unless the audience begins to believe in those stars, and those stars being put in situations where they can be featured or shined, however what term you want to use, to be put in those types of situations and see how the audience reacts. And if the audience begins to react positively, then you can begin to start planting seeds for separation. You can start planting seeds to try to break guys out. But initially, if you're going to pair anybody with Bray Wyatt, I don't care who it is, they have to be willing to take a subservient role. And I'm not sure if that's something that you want to bring in new stars from the outside. And let's say if you use the example of Bray, Bo, and Braun, there's the alliteration, that they're all coming from the WWE. No matter how long it's been since they've been released, they're all coming from WWE TV. So it's a matter of how do you tell that story. I could buy Bo Dallas, although, like I said, I won't believe it until I see it. With Strowman, my suggestion would be absolutely not. If you want to bring him in, it might be a fun story to actually have Bray Wyatt mess with Braun Strowman and essentially continue the story they had in the WWE and do it elsewhere. But essentially, it's going to be where Strowman becomes the muscle, and then he joins, and then you have the Cult of Wyndham or whatever name they're going to use. Then you can start doing that. But up until then, don't bring them all in together. Again, and this is presuming we're talking about AEW. There are too many factions in AEW, so if you're going to have this one, which I think could work, it could be a money drawing one. It's a matter of featuring it and maybe de-emphasize some of the other perception-wise, in my eyes, lower card, or I shouldn't say lower card, but less attractive factions. I'm trying to find the right word to use here to not be offensive, but it's just with other groups that you can de-emphasize in order to emphasize that group.
Right. right. We also might have Adam Cole leaving soon. His contract has expired, and
Well, it was
apparently he has turned down a bunch of contracts. So I don't know what he's looking for specifically, but I mean, he's been sticking around because his contract expired a while ago.
Well, he's signing. He's obviously signing extensions. They're not just going. WWE's just not going to have him on television without signing some kind of an extension, even if it's short-term extensions.
Yeah, they're
4 weeks, 6 weeks,
whatever
whatever
he's signing, it's not even 6 months. It might be month to month, or he agreed, I think,
through the end of SummerSlam.
through the end of SummerSlam, and who knows if they'll ask him for another 3 months or whatever it is.
Listen,
but he might be leaving. I mean, this is another clear-cut AEW, slam dunk. He's definitely going to AEW.
Well, yes, if he was to go, but I doubt that very seriously. I don't think he's going anywhere. I'm willing.
So why not just sign?
Well, part of it might be it's a matter that, if Adam Cole is in the position of leverage, and he's and let's just say Adam Cole is the biggest star on NXT, even though he's not the NXT champion, but he's the biggest star. He is the star of NXT. Adam Cole is. So if the WWE screwed up in this regard and not, and not re-upped his contract or rolled it over or whatever they would do, and Adam Cole has the opportunity to negotiate, why not? I would probably make it very clear to Triple H and Vince McMahon and whoever is sitting in the negotiating table saying, listen, I don't have a real intention of heading over to AEW. I don't want to. However, I'm going to get what I want. Not that bluntly, you'd say it a little more professionally, but that's the gist. The gist is, I want you to stay, but I want you to give me what I want. And if the WWE wants to yank his chain, for lack of a better term, then he could just go Adam Cole could just roll right on to TNT and go wrestle for AEW.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to happen. I think that the WWE is going to work out a contract with Adam Cole because he's a very important cog to the NXT show. So I highly doubt that he's going anywhere.
Okay. Here's the thing. Usually when it comes to leverage, you have to do it to a company or whatever, to a boss who is afraid to lose talent. They clearly don't give a shit. Unless your name is Roman Reigns, maybe Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, maybe Bayley, Sasha, and maybe 5 more. I think anyone is on the top. Anyone and everyone. If you're not like a top 10 wrestler in their eyes, right? Whoever they think, I think they'll let you go. They'll say, "Well, we don't want you. We don't care. We don't really care." Adam Cole, NXT. If you're watching WWE television, I am sure of it. Vince McMahon is making a point to tell every NXT fan, everybody who works in NXT, every WWE fan, that NXT means very little to him. And he's going to use it for what it's supposed to be used for. I'm going to take talent when I want to. And I don't care what it does to your show. I'm going to pin your champion if I have to on my show to make whatever this show better. But NXT is not a priority. There's no way you think that Vince McMahon is looking at NXT as a priority. And there's no one in NXT that Vince McMahon is going to go, sure, give him more money than I want to pay some of the guys up here on the main roster. There's no way in hell. No way in hell. Unless Adam Cole is asking for other things that have nothing to do with money. If it's money, they're going to say, whoop, bye. Now, if it's something like I get to stay in NXT and never go to the main roster, something like that. And he wants that kind of security because it is like if you're looking at some of the guys who've gone up recently, I don't think some people who are in NXT want to go up. I really don't. It's like it's suicide up there.
Well, I've said this many times. For anybody that thinks that the WWE as a business have no care for NXT, y'all are foolish.
Are you
Now,
watching the current product?
hold on now, slow down, let me finish. Now, from the television perspective, in terms of the pecking order, right? It's SmackDown, Raw, and NXT in that order. And SmackDown is because of the fact that it's on network television, and Fox paid $2 billion for the rights to SmackDown. So that is the top priority on WWE in terms of their television program. Then it's Raw. And again, for NXT is viewed as the C show. So again, your point is well taken. I am not arguing your point about the talents from NXT, the way that they've been booked. They have not been booked well in recent memory. But one of the things to be mindful of is that the vast majority of the main event talents, probably all of them actually, all of the top main event stars, with very few exceptions, have all come from the NXT system. All of them. And this is where the future of the WWE is predicated primarily on the health of the NXT system, because that is where they're going to either A, get the top indie talents and bring them in and groom them for national television, or what they do is, they take their chances on, athletes from other disciplines, and they bring them in to see if they fit, if they would work in the WWE. It's very hit or miss. And yes, if we can use the examples of Keith Lee and Karrion Kross and, many others to say that they come up from NXT, and if Kross is the NXT champion, why has he lost two of the 3 matches he's had on Raw? And again, my whole thought process is bring him in as the NXT champion, bring him in with Scarlett, bring him in with his entire presentation, and let him be viewed as a badass on Raw, which will therefore hopefully bring some of the viewers from Raw over to NXT on Tuesday night. That has not been the case. And I don't know what will happen with Karrion Kross, meaning at NXT TakeOver when he wrestles Samoa Joe, whether or not, because I would believe that it's a match where Joe will get beat. But the fact is that Kross is on Raw every week. It almost feels like more of a toss-up than it should, because again, I've always said about Karrion Kross that Kross is not ready to be in the main roster yet, because he's got the look, everything is, aesthetically speaking, everything is set. But his matches have been so-so. And again, the match that he had with Keith Lee on Monday night, although Kross was defeated, the match was actually good. Kross got the majority of the offense in the match. Keith Lee had to fight out of the sleeper hold, and then when he hit him with the spirit bomb, Keith Lee's beaten countless dudes with the spirit bomb. So for him to beat Kross, I get it. He's the NXT champion. You shouldn't put him in that situation. But it's not, again, he's not. He didn't lose to El Torito. You know what I'm saying? So I get it. I get it. And if for the fans and the people that are thinking, oh, that Vince McMahon is sending a message to the NXT roster to say, in essence, you ain't shit, that's ridiculous.
I don't think it's ridiculous at all.
It's
What the
ridiculous.
hell is he doing? What is he doing? Do you remember Survivor Series 2019? Do you remember
Yes.
this show?
Yes.
What happened on that show? What was the point of the show? It was a very clear-cut point of that show.
Yeah, the clear-cut point of the show was to feature the NXT roster.
Yes,
on
it
pay-per-view.
was. Yes, it was. What did that tell you? That they wanted to give NXT everything they needed when they were on their way to USA. They said, "Look, we're gonna strap the rocket to NXT. We're gonna give you everything you need so that you beat AEW." Well, there's
I'm
no
not
more
comparing
NXT
AEW as
versus
much as it was to
AEW.
compete against them.
Well, no,
To
they
compete.
wanted them to beat and put them out of business. That's what they wanted. That
If you,
you don't
if
think
you
so,
say
Lou? Really? Seriously?
No.
They
No.
counter programmed everything, even the charity show.
And if you want my response, I can give it to you straight. The response is that when SmackDown, when NBC lost SmackDown to Fox, NBC came back to the WWE and says, we need another program. Now, mind you, with NXT moving to Wednesday nights, they could have put NXT on any night of the week. Now, NXT always aired on Wednesday nights on the WWE network. So it seems like a quote unquote seamless transition. You could say they're counter programming AEW, fine. And you know what? I would have done the same thing, because you're not going to give any new company any part of the market share. I wouldn't do it either.
How do you think that?
If I could counter program against them, and at least and mind you, if I could get in there and counter program, even if I don't win, it's a matter that my program is there. It's taking eyeballs away from the other guys, because it's still a competition. It's not a matter of everybody gets a piece of the pie. If you're trying to get on national television, and it's in Vince McMahon's mind, try to enter his terrain, he's going to fight you for it. And he's got the right to do that.
Let's just talk about CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. I guess, well, Daniel Bryan first, because it's not as obvious or hasn't been teased as much. But it looks like he might show up in AEW.
I'm almost certain that he will.
So, how would you use Daniel Bryan? When do you think he's coming?
September 22nd at Arthur Ashe Stadium.
That's when I think as well. And I want to go. But I don't know if I can, because I'm going to the Jersey show. And now I have a new schedule at work that I'm starting, and I don't know if they're gonna be okay with this.
Okay, understood.
Oh, I'm so upset. I wanted to go to Chicago too, but not gonna happen. So I'm gonna miss out on history. I'm gonna have to watch it on television.
Well, here's the deal. I'm almost certain that Bryan Danielson is going to show up at AEW. Almost certain. How do you use Bryan Danielson is a little weird. And here's why. Bryan Danielson is going to show up to AEW. He's going to be a massive babyface. Massively, huge, super over babyface.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that in a situation like that, Danielson would be the guy who you'd want to put fairly quickly in a program with the AEW champion. Fairly quickly. I don't know what fairly quickly means, if they just want to pull the trigger that night and just have him wrestle Omega. If that happens, Omega needs to take the fall. We don't care about what stories they have planned. They can always go back to it at a later date. Put the buzz on Danielson, have him beat Omega and be the AEW champion on his first night in. The fans would lose their noodle. And that would be fantastic. But if you're trying to slow burn and have a program potentially with Danielson and Omega, again, I have not been a big fan of Kenny Omega in AEW, because I think that a lot of what he does, especially as a heel, is the whole trolling, making fun, he's just poking fun and trolling and spoofing. And as much as for, the audience that loves AEW, they might think that's fun and cool, I don't dig it for a guy who's the world champion. When you're the world champion, that faction should be, and again, it doesn't mean that they all have to be, straight and serious, but meaning that all the stuff that they do is done with a mean edge, and it's not done for a comedic effect in any way, shape, or form. that everything is done. Like, they can be funny and they could be coy and they could do all the things they want to do to get themselves over. But if I was to see Danielson versus Omega, the way that Omega is being presented right now, I would have no question that the match would be very good. But I wouldn't necessarily be as invested in the personalities and saying I have to see this match versus I want to see this match, because I know the match will be good. But it's a matter that the way Omega is being presented now, I don't have any investment in watching him either retain the title or lose the title. And that's the deal, as the reason why I'm like not too enthralled with the idea of having Danielson work with Omega, because again, AEW has a tremendous opportunity here. They got a lot of buzz and a lot of momentum. And presumably, I'm very much convinced that Bryan Danielson is going to go to AEW. And I think that that's a tremendous opportunity, that if Omega was more of a, if the Elite were a little more Horseman-esque, meaning not with the suits and, whatever have you, but meaning less of the comedy, less of the spoof, less of the trolling, and more of like just heels that you want somebody to beat them because they're so good, but it's like, damn it, I'm waiting for somebody to kick their ass and beat them. And if Danielson shows up, you're like, yes, boom, that's your guy. But the way that they're presented on television, I'm not as invested in anything that they do, because I genuinely don't care one way or the other whether they win or lose, because the way that they present themselves turns me off so much that I'm not invested in anything that they do. I could watch it and judge it if it's good or bad or, for my flavor, but I'm not invested in anything that they're doing.
I just I cannot believe that you do not enjoy this act. It's crazy.
I don't. Not at all.
You're never gonna like them. It doesn't matter what they do. You're never gonna like them.
Listen, I've always been open to that, but I don't know.
Look, it's this thing. People, once their mind is set, human beings, it's really hard to change that. You're never gonna like Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks were such a serious babyface team. They were doing very little of their act. They turned it all on when they turned heel. Full on. It is very entertaining. They are full on heels. They're as old school Southern heel as you can get. This is cheating every night.
I'm not even going to engage you in the argument about Southern wrestling because I don't know enough about it. But that gave me a tickle.
Their behavior is basically like a Jim Cornette style heel. Like, you go watch old Jim Cornette stuff, you're gonna be like, oh shit, it's Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. It's funny that he hates them, and they seem to like the same type of heels. It's really weird. But whatever. When people have their mind made up, they just have their mind made up. Mm-hmm. That's just the fact. But Kenny Omega, everyone who gets in the ring with him, every babyface looks amazing. Looks amazing. You get into the ring with Kenny Omega, you come out looking 10 times better than you did when you went in there. In a loss. That is great heel 101. No? You disagree?
Yes.
Well,
the example that I'll give you is the most recent episode of AEW Dynamite, the way that they beat Adam Page.
That was amazing. Amazing.
Horrible.
So you want realistically 3 of the top wrestlers in the world, based on what we watch on television, 3 champions, to go against one guy who's not a champion. The guy came close, by the way, and even eliminated one when he was down 3-1. He had the crowd in the palm of his hand. And now everyone wants to see Adam Page win the title. Everyone that watches AEW wants to see him win the title. And yet that was bad?
Yes, because of the way that Omega won. He beat him with his finish after hitting him with the belt and
after hitting him with the belt, after being down
Page
3 people to 1.
Again, the idea is that if you want the screw job finish,
they didn't need to screw him.
But the thing about it is the way that the match was structured, the way the whole ending was structured, it's 3 against 1. And you got the AEW champion and the AEW tag team champions against Adam Page. Conventional wisdom says 3 beats 1 every time.
Every time.
But all things being equal. And yes, Page did a wonderful job and he had a wonderful accounting of himself. But at the end of the day, if Nick Jackson is holds his foot so he can't hit Omega with the with the buckshot lariat clothesline, and then Omega hits him with the belt and leaves him laying, that's the finish. Because that's the finish.
How so
you don't need to hit him with the one-winged angel, because
why not?
Because at that
they should have did more. They should have beat him over the head with chairs. They should have kept it going. They should have kept beating him up. It's called sympathy, right? You don't want that babyface to have sympathy?
No, because the thing about it is that when you're watching the match, when you screw the babyface over, that's how the babyface gets sympathy. There's different ways to get it. The way that finish was laid out, the fact when Omega hit him with the belt and had him laying 1-2, Page kicks out, then he picks him up and hits him with the one-winged angel. It's like, dude, you want to look like you escaped, even though it's 3-on-1. You want to look as the heel like you escaped, because at that point you're making Page look strong, even in defeat.
So you think Page did not look strong in that match, even
the way that the match ended? If they would have hit him with the belt and he would have been done after a 3-on-1 match, and they screwed it and they had to screw Page out, fine, the match works.
So that match did not work. It did not accomplish what it was supposed to, which was to make people want to see Page win that title.
People want to see Page win that title. But at the end of the day, again, the elite is what the elite is. You already know what I think of the Dark Order. That hasn't changed, and that will not change about the Dark Order. I think very highly of Adam Page. I always have. And I think that Adam Page is a star. And the thing about it is the way that this match was laid out was fine. 3-on-1 at the end. Perfect. That's fine. The babyface should have to overcome. The thing is that if what AEW is doing is they're not going to have Adam Page work against Omega at the next pay-per-view, that's obviously what this match was set up to do, was to remove Adam Page from the title picture. That's fine. But the thing is, you don't want to have him get beat flat, because even though in your mind you think that, hey, they beat him up more, so that makes it look like, it's more sympathy on him. No, that after a certain point, the heel beat the babyface flat. If he hits him with the belt, 1-2, and Page kicks out, and then you hit your finish and you beat him there, you've beaten him flat.
No.
If you've beaten him flat.
No. That was a 3-on-1. They jumped him. Him. That tells me, as close as Adam Page got, that had this been a 1-on-1, he would have beat Kenny. That's all I saw in this match. If they get in the ring, he's gonna beat Kenny. Unless Kenny cheats, or unless he has a 3-on-1 advantage. That's the only way he can beat him, with a 3-on-1 advantage.
Again, I was okay with everything except Kenny hitting the one-winged angel, because you want to make sure that you don't use that move on Adam Page to beat him. Because that's all. That is all.
I saw nothing wrong with that. I thought it was a better fit. It was a better match. This is why I like AEW. Their ideas are 10 times better than mine. My idea was for Kenny and Hangman not to even touch. For Kenny to get himself disqualified when it got down to the end, for him to go, screw this, I'm not getting in there with Hangman. I'm out of here. And him taking the count out and just leaving and them not touching.
Yeah, but
that's what I wanted.
I don't understand why that. I don't understand why that would happen, considering that, every time that Page has wrestled Omega's beaten him with the one-winged angel. Every single time in a 1-on-1 match.
You mean one?
So I don't understand why Omega would run away, but that's neither here nor there. I get your premise, and I get what your thought process is.
Well, I didn't know. First of all, I didn't know who was going to win. I thought Page was going to win. So my thought process
that would have been who I would have put over. I would have put Adam Page over. But
Yeah, but we
obviously
don't
they have a
know
different
the
plan.
plans. We don't know what's gonna happen at that pay-per-view, and we don't know who's gonna show up. We don't know. We don't know anything. Another good thing about AEW, we don't know what the hell is going on. CM Punk could show up, Daniel Bryan could show up, and they can show up. Let's say, I think it's clear that CM Punk is showing up at that Rampage show. So I thought he was gonna probably show up at that All Out. Um, so then I was like, well, if CM Punk is gonna be at All Out, and Daniel Bryan's gonna be at All Out, may not be a good time to put the belt on Hangman, because the shine is not gonna be on him. The spotlight is not on him if the show has CM Punk and Daniel Bryan on it. But wrestling, potentially CM Punk is gonna wrestle for the first time, maybe at that show. If that's the case, there's no way in hell, at least not the first match, that you can have Hangman win that title. Hangman needs that moment to himself.
Well, it's true. I think the one thing that's going to happen here is, and again, my disposition is that Bryan Danielson will almost certainly show up on AEW. Although it appears that AEW has been teasing the hell out of CM Punk, and they've been teasing it like crazy, to the point where it almost feels like if CM Punk doesn't show up in Chicago, whether it be on August 20th or September 5th, they're going to burn the building down.
Yes, they will. They will burn the building down that day.
It's weird to me. Part of me believes that as much fun as Punk is having with this, because CM Punk is having a terrific time with this, and he should.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me kind of thinks that he has unfinished business in the WWE, and he should go back to the WWE. He has unfinished business there. Bryan Danielson, I could clearly see him in AEW, clearly. And I'm almost certain that he's going. I would bet good money on that. With CM Punk, I'm not that certain. And with Punk, I'm almost to the thought process to say that he's got unfinished business in the WWE and should go back.
Maybe he does have unfinished business in the WWE. The problem with CM Punk going to the WWE, which it would be strictly for the money. In my opinion, it would be strictly for the money. He would not like it. He would not enjoy it, based on his own words. Even the pipe bomb, because the pipe bomb, it was like a little, this is how I'm feeling, what's wrong with this company. All those feelings he had have gotten worse since then. I think that's in terms of how WWE, like the things that he didn't like about WWE, they can do whatever they want. It's their company. But those things that bothered him and made him feel like made him feel that way, those things are way worse now. They are a lot worse now. There's no control. They have full control of everything the wrestlers are doing. I'm sure CM Punk would do his own promos and things like that. And he'd be one of maybe 4 or 5 people, maybe the New Day, maybe Roman, definitely Roman. I'm pretty sure Roman does his own thing. But I think it would still bother him to see other people, his friends, being treated, I don't think he would like it. AEW is literally, as soon as AEW was starting up and they were telling you what they were going to be about, how they were going to handle business, how they were going to treat its wrestlers and its fans, and the how they were going to do promos, and they were going to have managers, and tag teams are going to matter, and this and that, whatever, blah 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 blah. This is literally it's almost like they took it out of CM Punk's mouth. The whole script, like how we're going to put this damn show together, like what we should do with the show, is literally like everything he's ever complained about. Don't do what CM Punk doesn't like. That's basically what AEW tries to do. Like that's why after a month of watching AEW, I'm like, well, CM Punk is the perfect fit. The only thing that makes it weird is that he has that weird situation with Coco Cabana, and Coco Cabana's over there. Hopefully but business is business. So at the end of the day,
who cares?
Yeah, I don't care. I just want to see CM Punk
figure it out.
Yeah, they'll have to figure it.
If y'all got to get into a fist fight, do it. You're grown ass men. Figure it out.
Well, they'll be fine. They're professional. I don't think they're gonna be
That's
there.
right.
They're both
That's right.
professionals, so they'll be fine. But besides that, it is literally a match made in heaven, based on everything he dislikes about WWE. It's just a perfect fit. So unless WWE is gonna give him the money, like a ridiculous amount of money, which I'm sure they would give him a ridiculous amount of money, and I'm sure they offered it to him. But at the end of the day, just I know he lost his love. It felt like he lost his love for wrestling, but you can tell how much he loved wrestling when he was really, really in it. You can really tell more than a lot of people. It felt like he was as passionate as anyone in the entire business about wrestling, and I
Yeah.
think that's still there. And if it's about the passion and the love, then I think he'll go to AEW. Maybe he'll go to WWE 5 years down the road when it's time for retirement, have the CM Punk retirement tour and Hall of Fame and all that fun stuff.
I
That's the
mean,
best time to go to WWE at the end of your career. Say goodbye to all your fans, not just the new ones you gain in AEW, but go back to WWE, say bye to those fans, have your last matches over there. That's fine. Kind of like Kurt Angle did, something like that.
my fear is with a guy like CM Punk is that I don't know how old Punk is, but he's probably closer to 40. And then, and again,
He's over 40, over
he's
40.
over 40, right? So
Mhm.
at this point now, obviously, 40 is no longer old in wrestling. But the fact is that him being away from wrestling now for the last 7.5 years, it probably has been good for him in terms of his body not taking as many bumps. He had a short MMA career. He had 2 fights. He's 0-1-1. He's technically 0-2, but a whole technicality, got him a no contest on one of his fights. But the the thing is for me is like when I see him in AEW, again, it's going to be the same situation that Danielson would get. He'd be a raving babyface, except that I think the Punk should be a heel.
He will be a heel eventually. He'll
I
turn the
mean,
crowd.
I think that for Punk, but he should probably be a heel right from Jump Street.
Well, his first day, he will be a babyface for sure. And I'd like for him to do the Bret Hart where he is a Chicago babyface only.
I think the reason why I laugh is because I think that it would be great for him to heel on the Chicago crowd.
He'll never do that. I don't think he'll. Maybe he would. That would be cool. But I don't think he would ever.
I want him to heel because this is the reason why. I think it's because a guy like Punk has the ability to verbally eviscerate the crowd and verbally eviscerate AEW in a working way to where the crowd will genuinely hate him.
Yes, I
think that has to be established right from the beginning, especially if Danielson comes in with him and Danielson's going to be the ultra white meat baby face. There's no point having Punk either be on the light side of the force with Danielson or be somewhere in the middle to where he's kind of like, the whole Cody Rhodes' favorite thing, the old wrestling trope, the shades of gray. I'm like, no, baloney. You're a heel. Be a heel, full out heel, because I think that he could be an outstanding heel and could probably be in the vein of MJF, except that with a guy like Punk, you'll take it a lot more seriously because MJF doesn't have the level of credibility that Punk has. MJF has credibility and it's being built upon, but it's nowhere near the level that Punk is. So if Punk goes out and heels on the crowd and just verbally eviscerates AEW, he'd be the biggest heel in the company instantly and
I
can
think
draw some real heat.
I think he will be the biggest heel in the company because he's that good. I don't see him doing it to Chicago. If he does, that's fine. I'm cool with it either way. I'm not from Chicago, so I don't care. I did like that dynamic that Bret Hart had when he was this god in Canada, and then complete babyface in Canada,
Of course, but
complete heel in America. And Chicago,
But
it's just one city. So in every other city, he would just shit on them, but he would always come back home to Chicago and be this cult hero. Because at the end of the day, whether you're good or bad, I think in real life, everyone wants to be liked, even if it's by a small percent of the audience. Everyone wants to roar the crowd.
Listen, I don't deny that. My disposition isn't, again, my preference would be is to see Punk come back to the WWE, because I think he has a ready-made storyline with Roman Reigns immediately. It's a ready-made storyline. Ready-made. Punk will be the babyface in that situation. But Punk could still do the pipe bomb, could still do all the things that he's doing. And he could still kind of look up and say, you know what, I am not here, and he could basically say all the things you said. I'm not here because I want to be here. I'm getting paid a boatload of money to be here. But at the same time, you got the story with Paul Lee, which, Paul Lee was his manager, representative, advocate, whatever, special counsel, whatever name Paul Lee wants to have for Punk years ago. If the WWE really wanted to tell this story, they could tell the story that when the Shield first came to the WWE, it was supposed to be Ambrose, Rollins, and Cassius Ohno, otherwise known as Chris Hero. But the WWE decided, no, we're keeping Cassius Ohno in NXT. We're bringing up Roman Reigns. WWE ultimately made the right choice. They made the right call. But if they wanted to dig that story up, Roman Reigns could use that as his dig on Punk. And then you got yourself a story that can layer and layer and layer over many, many months. Would Punk win the WWE champ or the Universal title? Who knows? Probably not. But at that point, you got a lot. There's a lot that can be done there. That can basically, you could keep telling that story with CM Punk, and even if you don't get The Rock, you can tell the story with Punk leading into WrestleMania next year if you wanted to, because he'd be so hot that you'd be able to do that. My concern is with a guy, when you have Punk and Danielson, bringing them both in around the same time, you're going to get a tremendous amount of buzz. But at the same time, I don't think that they should both be baby faces. That would be
I don't think Punk would want to be a baby face.
Yeah, and
based on his history and the way he is, and Punk wants to push younger talent. You get what I'm saying? I feel like he wants to work with all these baby faces. Maybe he will. The thing is, when do they want for him to be heel? He'll be babyface day one. Does he do it the way you said in day one? Let everyone know I'm the heel? Or does he wait a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Whatever it is, he will be a heel. And and most of his career there will be heel, probably until he's ready to call it quits there. But and I think Daniel Bryan will be a babyface.
No,
although
I highly doubt Danielson would be a heel.
He would,
although Danielson did a good job as a heel in WWE, that's not his natural role.
It's not his natural role, but to me he did a great job in WWE when he was heel.
But I've always preferred him as a babyface.
I like him as a babyface, but it's expected. It's the obvious choice, which is fine. It's fine, but I don't think it would be bad. You can also do the reverse and do the unexpected and have Punk be babyface and Bryan be heel, which I think would really flip everything. Everyone would not expect that or see that coming. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to go the obvious route.
No.
I think they're going to go the obvious route. But Daniel Bryan got everyone to boo him in WWE, which if you would have told me that before he did it, I would have told you that it is impossible. It is impossible. And he did it, and it did not take him a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's grown, and again, Bryan Danielson I was introduced to him, many years ago out of Ring of Honor, and I always thought he was a fantastic talent. But when he got to the WWE, I quickly found out when he first got there, like he doesn't belong initially. And then I think that was the first time to me as a fan, I realized that in-ring talent wasn't enough. You have to develop personality. There has to be something about you that makes me want to look at you. And I kind of took it for granted for a very long time because, you know, growing up watching the WWF, watching WCW, watching all the wrestling that I saw from all over the world, the vast majority of the talents that I saw were already experienced veterans. So a lot of the stuff, the growing pains, I never saw. When I saw them on television, they were already a very refined product. But when Bryan Danielson first arrived to the WWE in 2006 or 7, he was an excellent in-ring wrestler, one of the best, but had zero personality. And it showed immediately. And over the years, his in-ring talent just kept getting better and better because you only do it with experience, and then working with the talent in the WWE, especially the upper echelon talent, there's no way you're going to get worse. And then as he began to develop a personality and letting himself go more and more and more, he's now become one of the best overall performers in the world. You can plug him in anywhere and it works. And that's something that it's going to be a vast benefit to AEW, because a guy like Danielson can come in, be a super over babyface, and then they can have a baby, you know, like a real babyface hero that the audience will completely go nuts for. Adam Page is another guy that the fans really, really love. It's a matter that I'm a little iffy on the way he's been booked. You and I can agree to disagree on that. But a guy like Danielson, if he comes in, he's gonna be a super white hot babyface, and AEW should just run with that and, you know, and take it to, you know, its end conclusion, whatever that is for them.
I mean, yeah, based on reaction, Adam Page is the biggest babyface in AEW.
Oh, he absolutely
And,
is.
and he wasn't when he first got to AEW, he was not.
Yeah,
So
it's true. It's true.
so I think he's being booked to perfection, and I would not mess it up. The story is for Hangman to eventually beat Kenny. He should beat Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
He shouldn't do it now because there's a lot of money in Daniel Bryan potentially against Kenny Omega. We got to do that match.
No,
But
too many.
Hangman has to beat Kenny for that belt, even if it's a year from now. It doesn't matter when, but it has to happen. That is the story. That is the best story to tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, yeah. This is kind of why I think that, to a certain degree, as weird as it sounds, it, you know, and again, it's very, very difficult, because part of me would have liked to have seen Adam Page win the title in September at the pay-per-view, and then you introduce Punk and Danielson later on, whether it's the week after or whenever, you know, introduce them later. Only because if you're you know, sometimes you can pause a story, and then when you go back to it, you may not get the same, you know, you may not get the same reaction. You know, my deal with Adam Page has always been is that I've always liked him. I thought he, you know, good looking guy. He looks great. You know, his work is good. The whole thing with the Dark Order, again, it's just like, I don't view the Dark Order as anything other than underneath talent. Like, I don't view them as they're certainly not there to elevate Adam Page. And Adam, at least for me, I don't see Adam Page's presence doing anything to make the Dark Order look any cooler or make them look any better. So it's ultimately, to me, it seems like it's not a good fit, because for Adam Page as a standalone babyface, especially in the world of factions in AEW, it's very refreshing to have a guy that stands alone and is able to fight alone. And if he has friends along the way, these are guys that they're not friends or buddies. They're basically, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So it's basically the elite picks fights with other guys, other individual guys, and they don't come to help Page. They come to get a piece of the Elite. And then it just so happens that comes to pass. Because for me, when I see the Dark Order and Adam Page wrestling against the Elite, I'm like, no. I know the fans. I know that the fans like John Silver a lot, and that's good. I think that Silver, you can make him, you can do something with him. And when I see the others, I'm like, that's fine. They could be good wrestlers in their own way, but I don't see that as a money act.
I mean,
and to put him with Hangman Page, I'm just like, no.
I mean, they don't have to be. They're not there to help Hangman be a main event act. They're there to have a friendship with Hangman, and we see that. And as fans, we want to be friends with Hangman. That's kind of why they're there, to be Hangman's friend. And you see how much they love Hangman, and we're not crazy for loving Hangman too.
Listen, for me, if I'm the booker, I wouldn't have that happen again, because Hangman Adam Page is so cool. It's such a cool gimmick and character on his own that I would prefer him to be alone. I think that there's something very refreshing about that, especially knowing in AEW that it seems like everybody, it appears, even though it's not necessarily true, but it appears that everybody is in some group or faction, that to have Adam Page standing alone and overcoming alone and fighting, and the fans are behind him and they're pulling for him, there's something very refreshing about that. And that's the reason why I just look at the Dark Order and Adam Page together and I'm like, absolutely not. This doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Hangman's bigger than he's ever been. So
yeah, and that's the reason why I'm saying that for AEW, I would have liked them to pull the trigger in September and just look at Punk and Danielson and say, we'll debut you later in the month.
Yeah, but at the same time,
to be able to get the payoff, because if you delay that, and let's just say AEW says we're going to delay this to November or January or whenever, Page may win the title and he might get the reaction, but you might look at it and say, like maybe this would have been better had it been done a couple of months earlier, because Page was white hot and it makes sense and people want to see it, and you put the strap on him. But if you're going to say, let's delay Adam Page, which is a guy that we've been revving up for a year, and now because we got potentially Punk and Danielson coming in, that we're gonna pause him to bring these guys up and then have them be at the top of the card, which makes absolute sense. But at the same time, when it comes time for Page to get his moment, you might be talking about the law of diminishing returns. That's the concern that I have for Page, because the fans may not want to see it as badly a couple of months down the line as they would be right now.
Maybe. And we won't know until it happens. But what I do know is that when AEW first started, they probably wanted to put the belt on Hangman, and people were mad that Hangman was the first champion because they liked Hangman. Hangman's popularity skyrocketed soon after that. Then a couple months after that, he got hot. He got really hot, and here we go again. Put the belt on Hangman, and we think he can't get bigger. We think he can't get more popular. We should pull the trigger. What happens now? He's hotter than ever. Okay, maybe now's the time. But things happen, and it is a business. And when they are spending the way they are spending and bringing in all this talent, you cannot pass up opportunities like selling 14,000 tickets in the United Center. You have to take that opportunity. If that's just the idea, the rumor, no one has said CM Punk is showing up. They kind of giving you the wink, right? They've told you he's showing up.
He better be there.
He needs to be there, absolutely.
Because if he's not,
he's gonna be there. He's gonna be there. Now they will make you think he's not. They will make you think he's not that day. He might be the very last thing you see, the last 5 seconds.
That's fine.
And I'm sure fans are gonna be getting a little bit like, oh no, don't tell me they fooled us.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, All I'm saying is that AEW was able, and again, Chicago, Illinois is essentially AEW pseudo home. I know it's in Florida and all that, but their pseudo home is really in Chicago because Chicago has been a very, very great market for AEW. And it's very impressive selling out the United Center. And ultimately, they were going to sell out. They were going to sell out the United Center anyway, even if Punk and Danielson were nowhere in the picture. They were going to sell it out anyway.
Probably, yeah, probably.
So the reality would be is that if they don't, if the cat's not let out of the bag and AEW just goes about their business and be able to, do their show as they would normally do it without having
Where'd you go, man? You're on mute.
ain't that something? The one time that I go on mute. So
Wait.
yeah,
Again.
Oh yeah,
we are. Go ahead.
I think I was talking about Punk and Bryan, and Bryan Danielson. Listen, they were going to sell out. AEW was going to sell out the United Center regardless of what whether Danielson or Punk were going to be on the show or not. They were going to sell the building out anyway. It's so in all honesty, I think that, and of course you don't want to kayfabe yourself if you're AEW. If the fans have an inkling that you're going to sign those two guys, they're going to want to see them. And you figure that in AEW's mind, they're like, what better place than Chicago to debut Punk in his hometown? That makes all the sense in the world. And again, AEW already made that decision. Obviously with this past week's match, they've essentially removed Adam Page from the top 5, so he's not getting the main event at the All Out pay-per-view. He's not going to get that match. It becomes a matter of who, and this is the reason why I believe that the opponent is going to be Bryan Danielson. I don't believe it's going to be CM Punk, believe it or not. And although I said that Danielson would debut at Arthur Ashe Stadium on September 22nd, but in all honesty, he would be the perfect opponent to put Omega in the ring with on that night, and Omega drops the title. Omega can't win that match. He has to lose.
I think Omega can't lose. I think that's why they canceled the Page match. I think now with all this talent coming in, Omega is the guy who has to have the matches with all these guys, in my opinion.
Understood. But what I'm saying is that if for Omega, knowing that Page is out, who's the next opponent? Not named Bryan Danielson or CM Punk. Who's the next opponent? Because Adam Page was the guy. And presumably that's when Page was going to win the title. Presumably.
I don't think he was going to win. Maybe he was.
Because in all honesty, with a guy like Omega, again, just this is my my opinion watching the show. What Omega doesn't either persuade me or dissuade me about him any one way or the other. I could watch his matches and watch them in a vacuum and say, okay, good or bad or whatever have you. But if you're going to bring in these top name talents, unless you have, I don't know who AEW has in line to face Omega next.
Well, Christian is probably somebody who he would face.
Well, yes, but the thing about it is with Christian Cage is that the way that Christian Cage has been presented on television, to put him in a match against Omega would seem a little disjointed, because even though they've had, one or two interactions, but what Christian Cage has been doing primarily has been feuding with Matt Hardy and his group along with Jurassic Express. So it doesn't make sense to put Christian Cage in a world title match. What what seemingly just feels like, all right, we're just gonna book this match, versus this could be a match that could bring a lot of eyeballs, that could be an excellent match, because Christian Cage is a very, very good worker, and can do a lot of wonderful things, and I'm sure he'd have a great match with Omega. But it's a matter of booking the match and telling a story to where I'm like, all right, I'm invested in the match, despite the way that I feel about Omega, because I like Christian a lot. So I would be invested in wanting to see Christian win.
Well,
although I know that he won't.
Yeah,
But I mean, watching him win.
I don't know if they're gonna do Christian. That was just somebody who is clearly, since day one, has been. He's clearly there. He's clearly gonna face Omega. It's just when.
Well, yes,
it could be on TV. It could be on TV in 2 weeks that he faces him. It could happen whenever. So it doesn't have to be at the pay-per-view. But when you have
what's the attract again, the match, and again, AEW can simply say Omega's not going to defend the title. You could just simply have that.
Or Omega could try to get out of defending the title, and then you can do something, whatever way you want to do it is fine. But my thing is, I think All Out, if we get Daniel Bryan before All Out, right? When's All Out?
September 5th.
September 5th. Okay, so All Out would happen first. And then all these shows, the Art show, that's September something else, right?
The New York shows are not the New York shows are 10
right
days
after?
And within you'll get the All Out pay-per-view in Chicago. You'll have the Wednesday Dynamite and their TV that 1 week, and then the following week they go to New York. So
yes,
wherever they're going to be,
I'm just trying to see how they're going to play this, because it depends, right? Because if the story of All Out is Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, you don't need a crazy main event. You just don't need your best main event for that show. You can save your biggest main event, so your best storyline. Or maybe they have the other thought process. Maybe their best storyline should be on the show with CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, my thought process is that if you have that pay-per-view show and you take the title off of Omega in a way that Omega could basically say, I was surprised, I was caught off guard, blah, 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 he'd be perfectly justified in saying that, because it'd be true. Let's say Bryan Danielson shows up, gets the match for the title and beats Omega, and he has to beat him quickly in order for the shock value to be that much stronger. The idea is not for them to have a 30-minute match, because at that point, then you're kind of killing the buzz a little bit on the debut. It's more a matter of Daniel Bryan going in there, but Bryan Danielson going in there, beating him in 5 minutes or less, and taking the title off of him in a shocking fashion. With the idea then is that if you want to have the rematch, if AEW's bread and butter is Dynamite and it's supposed to be on television, then you can have the real main event match on TNT television, because you only have 4 pay-per-views a year. And then you can have Omega chase, Danielson. Then from there, you can have a whole other, block of stories built around it. And you can do a lot of interesting things at that point. Like in my mind, there's a lot of things that I would do from a booking perspective to kind of make that work. To keep Hangman in the story, although he's not the focal point, but keep him around.
Okay, so here's my thought process. We might not see Daniel Bryan at All Out, because everything that's happening before All Out is in Chicago. So you got the Dynamite in Chicago or in Illinois, around the Chicago area. Then Rampage in Chicago. Then All Out. and then they go to Cincinnati, blah blah blah. They added that Rampage, and even then, that's 2 weeks later. That Rampage that was added, right? Because that's like the 20th or something.
Well, the 13th, they'll be in Pittsburgh, I'm presuming. I think that's where they're shooting Rampage. Will be in Pittsburgh. Then they go to Chicago on the 20th. I'm presuming the 27th, it will be a tape show.
Right.
I'm presuming the 27th will be taped. Then the first week of September, they'll probably be in Chicago for where, they're doing the All Out show. They'll probably do Rampage in the same building, or if not, in maybe a smaller venue nearby.
I'm trying to see what. So the Rampage that was added. What's the date on the Rampage that was added?
Well,
is it right before All Out? I felt like it was a later date.
It might be. I'm not very much aware of AEW schedule in terms of how they're touring.
I don't know. I gotta look into it.
Yeah, that's
But either way, because I think that Arthur Ashe show is where you debut Bryan, so that's after the pay-per-view.
Yes. The question becomes is that with a guy like Omega, what unless you just want to have Adam Page go out there and beat him up and not necessarily have a match, but just have Hangman beat him up, essentially leave him a receipt for what they did. I don't know. But it almost feels like in a situation like that, if you're not going to have the obvious opponent and you don't have a suitable backup, so let's be realistic, they don't have one. They don't. Then if you're bringing in new talent that will get an amazing reaction from the audience, that feels like that's your card. Yeah. And that's the reason why I don't think that Punk would be the right guy. I think that Punk is more of an attraction guy and not the every week TV guy. Danielson could be more of the every week TV guy and be the AEW champion, and then kind of work their way through. Because ultimately, and again, if you hear me out, my thought process would be is that Danielson beats Omega for the title, and ultimately Danielson does such a good job as champion that Hangman Adam Page is starting to get a little concerned, because he doesn't want to beat Danielson for the title. He wants to beat Omega, almost to the point to where Hangman is willing to help Kenny win the title back, not on purpose, but accidentally on purpose. So then you have Danielson versus Hangman in a series of matches. And then ultimately you can have a 3-way match later on. And that's where Hangman wins the title and he beats Omega.
Yeah, so me personally, I'm not beating Kenny unless Hangman's doing it. Only because Kenny doesn't need it, Bryan doesn't need it, Punk doesn't need, and this is just.
You're right. They don't. The
person who needs it is Hangman. Hangman needs to get to the next level. When he beats Kenny, that'll be the next level. If Kenny loses before that, it is not as special, in my opinion.
You're right. So but this is the reason why I'm surprised that Hangman's not getting the match in September.
He's not getting it in September because I think Punk is getting the first shot as a babyface. Punk's gonna lose. Punk's gonna turn heel eventually. He's gonna go feud with someone else. Maybe Moxley, things like that. He's gonna get distracted, taken away from the title picture, turn heel, and then he'll start his run as a heel, which will be amazing. We know that. Daniel Bryan is next. Daniel Bryan as a babyface. Daniel Bryan will stay babyface, but he's not winning either. Then Hangman is next. Hangman's going to beat Kenny after Kenny does business with Bryan and Punk. Because at the end of the day, Bryan and Punk, that's huge business. it's big enough that maybe, we don't know for sure, but maybe they changed their plans with Hangman and moved them down a couple months to accomplish it. So I think Punk is gonna do business in Chicago, and I think Bryan is next. I don't know where the next pay-per-view is. And I don't know if they'll wait that long because the pay-per-views are far apart. Well, it's every 3 months. 3 months flies. So maybe they could do pay-per-view. First pay-per-view Punk, second pay-per-view Daniel Bryan, third pay-per-view Hangman. Hangman wins, and it's off to the races for Hangman. That also gives Kenny enough time if he's gonna do any business with Japan, which is what I think is the final step. I think he's not losing until he does the business with Japan. And once he gets that business taken care of, then he will lose the title AEW first, and he'll lose all the titles one by one. He'll probably lose Impact to Moose. AAA, he'll probably lose it to whoever they want, whoever they think is a big up-and-coming star. And they'll do the same thing in Japan. And Kenny's going to go down this spiral of losing every title. And it's going to be great because he's going to deserve it. Because he's a shitty heel. And it's going to be awesome.
Listen, I sure hope so. I mean, again, you know, for the fans who've been, you know, enjoying all the crossover stuff, that's great. Again, I'm not a fan of the version of Omega that I'm seeing right now, but again, I'll keep watching. Hopefully there'll be something that I really enjoy, because I'm looking forward to that day. I really am.
You're not gonna enjoy any Kenny Omega or Young Bucks. You would have already.
You're probably right about the Young Bucks. Omega, although I don't like what I see out of Omega, but I have faith in him that I can probably get something good. Out of the Bucks, probably not. I'm just not a fan of their style. You're probably right about the Young Bucks.
You're not gonna like the Young Bucks. You're just never gonna like.
Because even when I watched him in the Indies, I just was like,
they can work like Arn and Tully. You're not gonna like it. You know how I know? Because they've already done it. They've already had these type of matches on purpose. I just know they do it on purpose. They go, let's have this type of match, and let's see if people notice or they hate us so much that they look the other way and they go, oh no, they didn't sell in that match. They'll sell for 7 weeks and people will go, they don't sell. Matt Jackson sold for 7 straight weeks on television, an injury, and everybody was like, oh, well, the Young Bucks don't sell. It's funny. But anyway, we gotta get out of here. So say bye.
Oh gosh, everybody follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the Wrestlebros. THEWRESTLEBROS. For Vic, I'm Lou. Deuces.